Hello, my name is Monique Carmela. I am a trauma-informed feminine empowerment, self-love, and relationships coach. I created the Good Girl Unleashed podcast as a way to support you on your journey to liberating yourself from limiting beliefs, trauma, suppression, so that we can all come home and live authentically and unapologetically. I support my clients and my community with resolving trauma, releasing suppressed emotions in a safe, supportive way that allows them to reconnect to their authentic self and create a deeply fulfilling life and rich, nourishing relationships. I am so grateful that you're here. Let's dive into today's episode. I wanted to share a little bit about mine and Liam's journey. It has definitely been a bumpy road for us, and that's what I really love about supporting other couples, because I know how challenging it can be when you're in a relationship and there is all these triggers and reactions and all the stuff that's beneath the surface that I definitely was not aware of in the beginning. And I'm not sure if I've shared in here, but our first year of our relationship was incredibly tumultuous and all the stuff was being triggered. It was incredibly challenging. And I didn't know what to do with it because I didn't have all the tools that I have now. So it was just like, and there was also the coping mechanism of alcohol as a way of distracting and numbing out and not feeling the pain that was deep within. So as soon as there was alcohol in the mix, it was actually amplifying the triggers for us and creating a lot of disharmony. So what I found is when I became pregnant a year after us getting together and alcohol wasn't really a thing anymore, it actually gave me a lot of space to do the deep inner work that was causing a lot of the disharmony in our relationship. And I was able to see a lot of what was going on. There was also the breathwork training that I did that just completely blew me wide open and allowed me to really touch some deep spaces and find my expression. So there was quite a few things that happened that brought us to where we are today, to me being able to actually hold this space and guide everyone here on this journey. I'm curious for Liam to share his experience. So just to kind of give a bit of context, so inside this program, we've been focusing on really unmet needs and how to support each other in meeting our needs and how to support each other when we are going into our reactions. So we spoke about what our attachment style and how we tend to react in challenging situations. So for me, it tended to be, in the beginning, there was a lot of freeze. And there was also a desire to flee because the sensations in my body were so intense. As we kind of got further into our relationship, my fight started to come out and I was very argumentative and quite intense of needing to fight and then wanting to flee. And then I noticed with Liam, there was quite a bit of the flee tendency. So through our journey, we've learned a lot about how to actually hold space for when we're in those reactions. And I found a lot of that is actually just giving each other space rather than trying to fix it in the moment and trying to have a conversation in the moment, actually taking space to let those cycles complete. And then we can come back and actually speak about it. So I'm going to just hand over to you now if you want to share about your experience with that.
Yeah, well, hi everyone. Yes, especially that first year was full on. I recall the first maybe couple months of just being well, I know that I could easily just react to everything that's happening at the moment, and because throwing alcohol in the mix, I think, is always just makes it impossible to hold space for yourself and for your partner, because your triggers are just multiplied and amplified, and so that made it really, really challenging. And I remember just being I could easily see this not working out because because I'm getting triggered, and like I'm generally consider myself pretty good at being able to hold space for others, but because she also knew where all my buttons were and was pressing those at the same time, it was really difficult. So yeah, we're just I guess lucky in that we did hold on, and yeah, it was just kind of taking the steps at the time with the tools that we had, enough to get us through to the next thing. And because there was a willingness to actually do the work, and credit to Monique's like journey, like she's just non-stop being just peeling back the layers and still willing to go deeper, and feel what's beneath each layer as you go through it. So having all the tools just makes it allow you to just go through that process a lot faster. And then when you've got the support of your partner there as well, makes it definitely a lot easier, a lot less challenging. And when you're doing it together, you can see because everybody's got their own stuff. Everybody's got a lifetime worth of experience that hasn't necessarily been integrated or processed or whatever. So those things show up with those that we're most deeply connected to and intimate with, and so when you've got those unhealed aspects of yourself, they still show up, and so that was a lot of that first year. But definitely once the pregnancy came into the equation, it obviously took out the alcohol, which meant having to go through the process of actually feeling what was present, and so that kind of led the journey to where we are today, I guess.
Yeah, it's even quite fascinating as like the journey continued, because another thing that alcohol was blocking me from was what I desired to bring into the world, which was this business. So it was, I think, in that second trimester that I actually started my business as well, and it just started to come through one step at a time. And then when Theo was 7 weeks old, we hit the road and we started doing the festivals and the workshops, and that brought up a whole bunch more stuff for us to deal with, because now not only do we still have like the other things that we're navigating, we're in a very close proximity. So we were pretty much like in our car constantly, like camping. So we're always in like a small space, always in each other's bubble, running workshops together, learning how to actually co-facilitate and work together and attune to each other. So I think that has had a massive, it kind of amplified everything and sped up the process of needing to learn how to attune to each other and work with each other, not only in personal life, but in work life. So we were just constantly together. And so I found like the triggers were there. And there was a lot of like reactions that we had to figure out how to work through, because our intention was always to hold the deepest space for the people we were facilitating our workshops for. And so in order to hold that depth of space, we needed to learn how to work together in harmony, be in our relationship in harmony, and work through the stuff that was coming up. And the thing for me, it's not about being in harmony all the time. It's not about being happy all the time. It's not about feeling this deep connection necessarily every single moment of our lives. It's for me more just noticing what's coming up and having the willingness to meet what's coming up and move through that. So even when, say for example, I was triggered by Liam, I wasn't necessarily like trying to force myself to get back to a feeling of deep connection and deep love and all of that. I was actually just letting myself go through the process and become aware of what is this trigger revealing to me. And then when I was in a space where I was able to come to Liam and have that conversation, that's what I was practicing doing, is waiting and coming to him once I was not emotionally charged. because when I was coming to him when I was emotionally charged and trying to like fix it, it was just getting amplified and it was skyrocketing. So I had to really learn to be patient and almost like, I guess, hold my fight and go and support myself in that process rather than fighting him and projecting at him. It was like allowing that fight to take place, but in a held space, if that makes sense. So taking my space and doing what I needed to do for me to feel supported, and then coming to him when I wasn't so emotionally charged and asking for his support or asking like, can you listen to this now? And it's a continuous practice. We're not necessarily perfect at all of this. We're just really taking it one day at a time, one step at a time, and noticing what's coming up each layer. Because as Liam said, it's like we're working through one layer and then another layer reveals itself and then another layer reveals itself. And we keep going deeper and deeper. And that's what allows a depth of connection that we didn't even realize was possible, and a depth of love that we didn't realize was possible, is just by going through those layers. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think just like having like you say, the willingness to show up and do the work and to do it together just creates a space for that deeper connection. And yeah, and when you are able to, you know, even just like those simple exercises of yeah, that you guys have done, it just allows some of those things that sometimes, you know, you think you're doing maybe like the best that you can, but then you start to realize like, oh, actually, like this is my part in contributing to the problem or the challenge, and you know, having the awareness of those things allows the change to take place. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful thing when you're able to do that together in a partnership, and really deepen that connection, because it is really possible. So
yeah, and I feel like I want to also just take note that like Liam still triggers me and I know I still trigger him, but the difference is that, like, for me, my relationship to triggers is very different now. In the past, it was like, I need to get rid of this, I hate this, it's uncomfortable, it's horrible. Whereas now, as soon as I'm triggered, I'm like, oh, there's something here, what is this revealing to me? And I get curious and I use my tools, and so it stops us from getting, like, in the past, it was creating these massive wedges because nothing was being really spoken about or really dealt with, and it was just kind of being buried or like put off, or we'll get to that at some point. And like I've talked about, like, putting the relationship on the back burner. We were doing that for a lot of our relationship. And so it just created this wedge that got bigger and bigger and bigger, and to the point where I was like, I don't feel connected to Liam like at all. Like, when did that happen? It wasn't overnight. And I started to get really curious about what were those subtle signs that led to this. And I started to backtrack, like, when did this actually begin? And I started to see the different things that where I hadn't expressed myself, or we hadn't had resolve, or there was a trigger or something that wasn't acknowledged, and it kind of felt like there was these elephants in the room that we hadn't addressed. And so as I started to backtrack and notice that, I was able to actually open that conversation from not an emotionally charged place, because I did that reflection for myself, and then I came to Liam and we would talk through it. And there was always a question that he would ask me, whether it was like a trigger, whether one of us was like wanting to flee the relationship, or there was this disconnection. He would always ask me, like, do we still have the willingness to meet each other to work through this? Because if we have the willingness, then we can go through it together. And the answer for us both was always yes. We always had that willingness, even if we didn't really know how we were going to navigate it, that willingness was there. And I've been speaking a lot about and recommending a lot about Alison Armstrong's work. And recently she spoke about the word willingness. And it's not just like, oh yeah, I'm open to see, we'll see how it goes. That's not what willingness is. Your will is your willingness. So you are willing this to happen. It's like setting that intention, like I will find a way. I'm willing to work through this. And so there's actually power behind that. It's not just a passive thing of like, oh, we'll just see. It's actually like, I desire to see if we can make this work, if we can find something, I am willing that. When she made that distinction, I was like, oh, that's really, really powerful. We're not just kind of sitting back and just seeing if something will change. We're actively showing up, and that's what everyone here is doing in this program as well. So just want to acknowledge you guys for that. And thank you, because this is really shifting not only our own relationship with ourselves, with each other, it's for the next generation. I know a lot of people in this program have children, so we're showing them the way of like celebrating partnership, of conscious partnership and healthy partnership, because someday they're going to have their own relationships, not only with intimate partner, but with friends and community. And so we really want to be able to have the ability to express ourselves and the ability to listen and hold space. So it's really, really important.
And we see with the kids just how much they model us, and how like Theos has been, it's just the amount of times we like catch yourself like, oh, where he does something and they're like, yeah, a reflection of things that you're like, oh, I didn't, yep, right, well, we need to deal with.
Thank you for that.
Yep, we need to deal with that, okay. So yeah, they definitely are, yeah.
And now I've got another one. There's going to be extra reflections. It's like just the popcorn, like, But no, it's a really beautiful journey, and it does give you that extra motivation to deal with this stuff, because we do want the best for our little ones and for the next generation. The other thing I'd like Liam to speak to is just our journey within our couples coaching. So we've been receiving couples coaching for the past few months, which has been really profound, like probably more profound than I was anticipating, and also really confronting. Even though I've been doing this work for so long, it's still confronting to be really witnessed and held in such a vulnerable space. It wasn't like, it's not just me doing my work on my own. There was not only Liam there, but also our coach there. And it's really deep when you're held in that kind of space. So yeah.
If you can find someone to work with in that way, I'd highly recommend it. Yeah, like as Monique said, even though like we've kind of been in the space doing the work and all the rest of it, it allows that mutual perspective to come in and just bring you into awarenesses and hold space in a way that can open up things in a really beautiful way, but in kind of like probably the biggest thing from my experience anyway is just the speed and the time probably could have worked out a lot of those things, but it just would have taken so much longer. The same thing again, like if you didn't have the tools to go through the process, like when we first were together, when those triggers happened, it would create a shit show for like months, and it was like still processing it months later, where Monique was still holding on to something, or I was still holding on to something, and it was just a really painful process. But as we've learnt the tools and everything, and then having the coaching there as well has just created the space to be able to have the capacity within ourselves to be able to address things directly and move through them so much faster. So then on the other side of that is like this just like profound, beautiful connection that's like constantly, when you think you've gone as deep as you can, it keeps getting more beautiful and deeper. So even though it's uncomfortable to do the work, yeah, absolutely, doing the work in the moment and as the things come up. But yeah, when like for me, I just in my heart I knew that when Monique and I'd met that there was something that was special that was there. So there was that willingness to like commit to explore that together. And and so having that support there from a third party really just takes it to another level.
And that's what I found as well, is because when you're doing this work together, so Liam and I are having our conversations, we're doing this work, we're reflecting, there's a different element when you've got someone to really hold space, where you really know that it's safe to express, you're held. It just really allowed us to have conversations in a much deeper way, where we both really felt safe to be seen and to be witnessed and to be heard. And there was some really profound experiences that I had. Like, there were parts of me that I was able to touch that I don't know that I actually would have been able to do on my own, even necessarily with a one-on-one coach. Because when there is stuff that is like trauma or beliefs or experiences that are held because of something you've experienced in a relationship. So say, I know we've spoken about like our original caregivers, your mother, your father. If there's something in alignment with like you're relating, then it's like you actually need the relationship or to be in that kind of space to integrate that. So there's just some things that, like, for example, when you enter into a relationship, that's when a lot of the time when we get all our triggers come up. A lot of the time we wouldn't experience that if we weren't in an intimate relationship. So how would we become aware that those things are there? Because that's what's creating the reflection, where like that's this person's coming in. And that's what I mean by conscious relationship, is you enter this partnership and they're able to show you things that maybe you weren't able to see before. And it's like, holy shit, there's something here. And then vice versa. You also show them stuff. And then it's same with like our children, they're reflecting. So it's not necessarily just intimate relationship. We see things when we're in friendships. We experience things when we're dating. We experience things in our community. So it's in relationship that we actually see what's buried inside a lot more clearly. And then when we're working with a coach, whether that's one-on-one or couples coaching, you'll find that there's so much more that is able to be revealed. And even like in these programs as well, you're able to go to such a deeper place and actually integrate what's within. It's so challenging to do that on our own. And I've noticed that for myself. I tried to do it on my own for a long time. And then when I finally started to receive support, it just completely changed the game and took me to layers that I don't believe I would have been able to get to on my own. And then it's just next level doing this work together in the couples coaching. There are a couple experiences that I had where I touched like an inner child piece that was just so deep that I really felt like I needed the extra space holding. So having Liam there and having the coach there really allowed me to go to that depth, because it was so intense and there was so much pain and there was a lot of fear around feeling this. And I feel like I was able to actually feel it because I had so much support. So I wanted to share a bit about that, because if it is available to you to do couples coaching, I highly recommend it. Or even coaching for yourself, because you can just integrate so much and come out the other side where it's just, it doesn't really have words. It's quite magical. And you just move through these processes much more quickly, much smoother. And we've noticed that for ourselves when we finally like took that step for ourselves to get that coaching. It's just life-changing. And then you finally have the tools that I just wish I had so much longer, like so long ago. Like, even there's so many times where I'm like, I wish my parents were doing this work so that they could have passed these tools on to us. So that's what I really love about working with people that have children. I'm just like, oh, thank goodness, because we've got these tools now to pass on to the next generation. So I'm so grateful that I found my way to this path and this journey so that I've built up my toolbox, not only to share it with you guys, but to share it with our children and their children, and to just keep passing it down. Is there anything else you want to share?
No.
So I'm just going to hand over to you guys now. Is there any questions that you have, whether it's about what we've just shared, whether it's about the program or anything that you're currently experiencing or needing support with? Anything that you want to ask or share?
Okay. Yeah, so I have a question prepared, because that's something I think we will come across during talking about some issue or conflict or something like that. And that's that Tomáš usually needs to leave during an argument. And because we will try to do the things the new way, like you suggested, just let him to have that space when he needs to leave. But when I imagine that situation, I think it will be really hard for me to let him go. So I was just wondering if you have some suggestions on what to do when I'm in that really charged place, when I need to solve this. And if I will tell him, okay, it's okay, you can go. So what should I do in that space, to calm down, because otherwise I would be just pacing angrily around I think it's really hard for me to let go once I want to talk or resolve something. So yeah, that's my question.
So that's very similar to me. And I remember I would just try and keep forcing the conversation, and Liam wouldn't respond. He would just he was in shutdown, and I would get more amplified. I'm like, I would get so much fire. I felt like I was going to explode. I was like, I don't understand why you won't talk to me. And I was just pulling my hair out. And what I realized was well, if we keep forcing it, it's actually not going to create safety for them to open up anyway. So for us trying to resolve it right here, right now, we can't actually do that because they're not in a space to. So as much as we want to, the more we force it, the more shut down they're going to be, the longer it's actually going to take for them to open up again. So if we want to get what we want to get, which is we want this resolved, we want them to speak to us, we want to move through it, we actually need to give them space. So I guess it's having that acknowledgement that you doing that is not actually going to get you what you want anyway. So what is it that you really want? And what is it that you really need? So something you can do is just practice acknowledging oh, I'm fighting, or I'm needing the resolve, or I'm forcing this. Just noticing it. The more you notice it, the quicker you will notice it, and the more you'll be able to be in control, and you'll be able to actually, okay, do I want to force this, or can I pause and breathe? So there's it's really even just that simple of just pausing and breathing. And even if you maybe need to storm out, throw your hands up in the air and storm out might be something and if you can, go to the bedroom and just punch the pillow, or finding a way to express yourself. For me, I like writing, so I would furiously journal or I would just go into the bedroom and I would shut the door and I would just go through the thoughts, and I would just say all the things in my mind that I was thinking, and I was like, what an asshole, can't believe he's doing this. Just let yourself express rather than wronging your experience or your expression, and just, it's all valid. So validating yourself, maybe journaling about it, and then once you're in a space where you're not emotionally charged, then you can go and check in and first and foremost, what do you need to feel supported here? And maybe could you take a bath? Could you do something good for you? Eat a nourishing meal, go for a walk. And then when you next connect with Tom, it's asking him hey, are you ready, or are you open to talk about what happened? And if he says no, you could ask, do you know when would be a good time? Or you could just leave it, and you might get triggered if he says no. So maybe you need to deal with the trigger again. So you go off and you deal with your trigger again, and you do what you need to do. Or you could just let him know, like, I would really love it if you could come to me and when you're ready, and put it in his court. And if he doesn't come to you in the next, like, say, couple of days, be like, go to him and say, hey, are you ready yet? Or like, are you ready to talk about this? But in a calm way, rather than like when we're coming in from that attack, and you can feel it when I'm coming from attack and emotional charge, he's not going to be ready to have the conversation because he's going to feel it. You can feel it energetically when someone's in their attack, and so they're going to perceive you as a threat, and they're going to go into protection.
I think too, when the feminine goes into wanting to express those triggers, and that it comes in a more of a masculine way, and it's hard for the masculine to hold space for that. Well, that's my experience, at least, anyway. So what I found early on when that happened with Monique, I'm just like, well, just stonewall, and just like, and that would just infuriate her even more. But more recently, I would say that, like, through the practice of doing it over that period of time, when Monique comes up and she says, like, hey, I'm feeling XYZ, something's like triggering me right now, but then is able to kind of like pull away and like just be like, to express that that's what's present for her at the moment, without coming from an attack space, which is really challenging. It creates then the space for the masculine to come in and go, hey, cool, like, to hold space without feeling attacked, or because when that attack happens, it's almost like a direct attack on like the core of the masculine's being, kind of thing. So it's like, well, I don't want to be, I'm not even prepared, whether I'm aware of it or not, to even hold a conversation, because like I've got stuff that you're not, there's your side of the story, and you need to express that, but there's also something that's present for me, that's there as well, and often I'd feel that, like, if I was, when the emotional charge gets built up to the point where you're kind of going back and forth, it's really hard for like that connection, because like ultimately you want to be able to come to each other in a connected space and share and so forth. But when that charge is built up, it's really hard to like when Monique would be like, this or that or whatever, I'd be like, well, there's my experience that I'm having with that, and because you can't hear that, or you're not listening, or you haven't got the awareness about something that I feel like you're missing. I'm just not even gonna. I can't even help it. I'm just fully gonna stonewall, and there's a full breakdown of communication that happens at that point, because then it keeps building up until it just explodes, kind of thing. So I feel that when Monique would do that, firstly, if she had the awareness about, okay, and coming to me like, oh, I'm triggered about this, or this is my experience now, but then not needing to, deal with it in the moment, or creating space to allow her to discharge some of that energy, so that then there's a bit more space to have that conversation that needs to happen. It just allows a little bit more space for the masculine to be able to come in and hold that for the feminine. There's
an element of like self-responsibility that we need, because often when we go into attack, we're coming from a place of, you've done something wrong and you must fix it. So if we're going to, again, if we even think about the communication tool we did on Thursday, when I was inviting you to interrupt with making them wrong, it's like, well, how receptive is that person going to be when you're telling them that they're wrong and they're misbehaving and you're treating them like, or pretty much like a child, like, you did this wrong, you must be punished, you must fix this. And we're coming from that projection rather than like, okay, where can I take responsibility for this experience? Like what I've said with triggers, they're triggering something much deeper. So there's something within you that's already there that's actually not their fault. They're just the trigger, they're poking that. And so yes, they can take responsibility for maybe what they've said or how they've acted, but they're not going to be able to do that when we're attacking them, because it's going to put them in survival mode, because they're going to go like, there's a threat here, I must protect. And that will shut down the conscious mind and you'll go like into the primitive, and it'll just cause you to go into those survivals. And same with what you're experiencing when you're in that attack, you're in survival mode. We're not really necessarily open to receiving them holding space, their presence, their love, their connection. We're not open to that. So even if we can, like, we can still feel the trigger and be like, you know what you said brought this up for me. Are you able to hold space for me while I just express what's coming up? I just want to let you know this is how I'm feeling. I know it's not your fault that I'm feeling this, but I just want to let you know that when you did that, this is what it triggered for me. I just want you to have that awareness, and this is what I need. And that might be, I need to go and take some space, or I need for you to be able to listen. Are you in a space to listen to what's coming up? So expressing what your needs are, and then asking, like, are you able to meet me here? And if not, maybe that's when you need to go into your own space and really work on meeting that need for yourself and just working through that emotional charge. So using your tools that you use for yourself. But I find like when I've been able to take responsibility, that's when Liam's been able to really hold space. And taking responsibility isn't saying that it's all your fault and they haven't played a part. It's not like kind of this idea of like we're letting them off the hook kind of thing. In a sense we are, but we're also letting ourselves off the hook, and we're allowing space for us to connect and support each other in the process. But we want to take responsibility for our part and then let them know what they did or said or didn't do or didn't say that impacted you, so that they're aware of that, because they might not actually know how what they do or say or don't say impacts you, because it's all about the interpretation. They may not have meant it the way that you interpreted it. And so it's opening up to the conversation, but taking responsibility for that, like, this is your experience. Does that help?
Yeah, sorry, I have to mute us because of the little one. That's helpful. Thanks. Yeah, I think my main fear when it's going on is that when we don't resolve it now, like we won't ever get back to it, because that's been a case, in the past. So then it's kind of like buried somewhere, and it comes up eventually anyway, but again in a like emotional kind of setup when we have a fight. So yeah, that will be definitely like new way how to deal with stuff.
So I would suggest, if you have the conversation and let Tom know how it impacts you when things don't get resolved. So just letting him know, like, it doesn't have to get resolved right here, right now, but I do need to have this conversation within the next, say, 2 to 3 days. Otherwise, this is how it impacts me, because he might not realize how it impacts you because of the way that he deals with things. And so if he knows how much that hurts and what it will provide for you by having that conversation and resolving it, and what it will provide for your relationship, so then he's knowing the negative impacts of not doing it, and he knows the positive impacts of doing it. He's going to be more on board with supporting you through that. And then you both get what you want, which is like the reason why we're here, is to have those deeply connected relationships. We want to have that deep connection with each other. We both want that. So if we realize that actually dealing with this and having the conversation, even though uncomfortable, will give us what we both desire in our relationship, we're going to prioritize that. So maybe having that conversation as well will be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for me, it's hard to stay in that when there is conflict, when it is like emotional charge, because I kind of get feeling it's going nowhere, that after it's going more just to the fight and really resolving the problem. So it's better than to say or do something what I don't want to do or say. It's just better to leave and go back to the later when I have a chance to think about it and think what I really want to say, not just blast her with some emotions, So maybe my question would be, is there anything what I could do to help me to stay longer and calm, and how to hold the space there and not get involved, like emotionally involved, just to stay on my ground and just be there for her?
Yeah. And I think that's really beautiful, and it's something to take note of here, is that Tom is leaving the scene to actually as a way to support you. He's like, if I stay here in this conflict, I might say something that's actually going to be more hurtful. I want to go and take some time, really think about this, feel into this, and come back to you when I know what I want to say, rather than agitating the already agitated situation. So when we have that awareness that our partner is leaving the scene because they're actually trying to support us, they don't want to hurt us more, then we're like, oh, when they leave again. So when you have another trigger or another reaction and this happens, because it likely will come up again, and you'll have an opportunity to put this into practice. When Tom leaves, Kat, you could actually oh, he's leaving right now because he doesn't want to hurt me. He actually wants to give me space and give himself space so that we can both have time to process, to discharge, and then come back together when we're able to have a conversation. And that could already shift your experience, even though it can be hard still, because it's going to take practice. But over time, it'll become much easier, and then you'll actually be able to hold space for your emotional charge and still be present. So for example, with Liam, I can still feel triggered and I can still feel all the stuff, but I'm able to speak to him without coming from the attack.
I think working something out that works well for both of you. So even just say, for example, it's been okay, well, I'm feeling triggered right now. This is what it's about. Need to address it urgently. I don't feel like I've got a couple days to deal with this because it's something that's coming up right now. Just expressing that for a start to your partner can, and then being okay, acknowledging that, so the other partner says, okay, well, I see that this is important, but I feel that there's an emotional charge here and we need to deal with that first. So let's come back in 10 minutes, half an hour, where we can, go away and actually create the space to process it without the emotional charge. Because when you try to address it there and then, and that emotional charge builds up, then you're arguing, and it's not even about the actual problem. It ends up just being you going back and forth about it. It just gets all foggy and distorted and all the rest of it. So if you can then, if you're able to then be okay, well, we both want the outcome of working towards getting the resolve to ultimately build the deeper connection together, and this is just one of those small stepping stone parts in the process. If there's the mutual agreement to that, then it's okay, well, then we can work together to overcome this. How do we do that in a way that supports the both of us? Finding out whatever that works for you, but being able to say, okay, well, next time there's an emotional charge, and it's really good to kind of discuss these things before you get to the blow up. We had at one point a word, like kind of like a code word. Didn't really, I think I wanted it to work more than Monique wanted it to work, but it was something that was there, that brought us back to, like, it was like an anchor to say, hey, when we weren't emotionally charged, we're like, this is what we want, this is what we want to work towards. We both acknowledge that, but sometimes you can't see that when you have the emotional charge there. So it was like a thing to just to say, when we're getting into the flurry of the craziness of the emotion, here's the thing to remind us, to bring us back to a grounded space, to go, okay, hey, what do we need to do to support the other? And if it's space to be able to process this emotion just for a bit before we can actually have the direct conversation about what's going on, then there's the opportunity to do that. So just finding out what works for you, and if it is just creating that space, going away and then coming back, or just trying new things and just see it, how you go.
Yeah, I think at the time we tried the code word, I hadn't done all this work yet. And I was like, I just want to fight. Like, not kind of knowing, like when you're in the calm space, you're like, yeah, I want connection. Yeah, I want to work through this. But when you do have that trigger and all the fire is there, it's like, F the code word kind of thing. Like, I want to talk about this now, but like Liam said, we ended up not even talking about what was really going on. We weren't getting to the deeper layer of it. We were talking very surface layer, and I would tend to get like a bit nitpicky and like poke at things that weren't actually the problem. And we would go around in circles and circles, and it felt like we were having the same argument again and again and again. And I was like, this just isn't working. It must not be meant to be. Like, kind of go into my own stories and look at my like ways of validating my need to leave, which was another survival mechanism. So for me, there was a lot of inner work that I needed to do for me. And so I went on a journey of like, actually, I need to focus on that right now. And then the work that we did together was so much smoother because I had dealt with a lot of my own stuff. And I continue to do my own work, and we do our work together. And it's pretty tremendous what happens when you can do both. So yeah, maybe getting curious, like when you do get triggered and when things, like, notice what is triggering you. Notice what is triggering you and what it's revealing to you. So still doing your own work, but then, yeah, working together of, okay, I want to share with Tom, this is what's coming up for me. And Tom can share with Kat, like, well, I need some space to process so I can actually come back and support you. So letting her know why you're leaving and for how long, because if there is a fear of abandonment, and if there is a child experience where maybe a caregiver kept leaving when you really needed them, then there's this fear and this anxiety, like there's no one here to take care of me. Like, it's going to trigger that little girl or that little boy that's like, where is my mum? Where is my dad? Like, there's a survival need that's not being met. And so it can trigger that abandonment and that fear. And so you actually want to let them know, like, hey, I'm just going to take, like Liam said, like an hour, let's take an hour just to process what's going on. Maybe there's something you could do together, or maybe you need to take time apart. And then come back and let them know when you're going to come back. So whether it's an hour, whether it's a day, whether it's 2 days, whatever it is, but they do need to know. It's the same thing when I do inner child work with people. And we did an inner child journey in module 3, and I was saying, you got to come back and connect with your inner child. You got to check in on them, because they're going to like be almost like waiting, like, is she going to come back? Did she really mean what she said or he said? We want to keep checking in and rewiring that fear of like, I can't rely on anyone. They're not going to come back. They're not going to do this. And we start that with ourselves. Like, how can I show up for me? How can I honor my own commitments to myself? How can I honor the commitments I make to my partner? So we start with ourselves, and then we support each other as well. And that's the power of the couple bubble as well, is we're making that commitment and we're rewiring the nervous system to be in safety, in ease. How does that feel? Is there anything that you want to speak to or ask about?
I think that explain are the main resource of like not understanding or our biggest issue, what we are dealing with now.
The communication.
Yeah. So I think we'll try that just one step at a time, so it's easy to remember and practice it and see what kind of comes up when we apply this into our lives. Hopefully. Yeah.
Wow.
You got any questions?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's a lot of work for me, definitely, because I know when I'm in that space, when it's really emotional for me, it's almost like my thinking part is not there. It's not I don't want to I don't want to resolve it calmly. It's almost I'm not able to in that space. To even think about like calming down, it's it's something I know I need to work on. But it's hard because when I'm in that space, I don't even think about working on it, so yeah.
I get the image of the X-Men, the Storm chick, where like that charge just builds up and then it's just like and so no wonder, and that's not just for you. I mean, I think that's pretty well like across the board for the feminine when it's
Alison calls it the rage monster.
I call it the dragon. And then I was trying to explain Tomasz that when I'm in that space, the thing that I usually need the most is the hug. But he's like, who would want to hug you, right? I'm like,
and it's so hard for the masculine as well, because it's like there's an aspect of us that wants to come in to do that, but it's like we've given you the keys to the kingdom of our heart, and you know exactly where to point that dagger. And if we come in to do that, and it might have happened already in the past a few times, you can cut them down just like in an instant. So there's that reluctance, or even coming in with that past hurt, to actually want to give that hug. Because that was the other thing too, is like the amount of times when if I did do that, where I would come in and just give Monique a hug.
Don't touch me.
It was kind of like a 50-50 chance of getting my head bit off, or actually it would calm the situation.
I called it Tornado Monique.
Yeah. I've still got the bruises to show. Yeah.
But yeah, so like the more you notice it, the easier it will get.
Yeah.
And the more that you do this work, the easier it's going to be like, oh, the dragon is here. Let me just take the dragon in the other room so no one else gets hurt. That's what I started to actually do for myself. I was like, oh, like what happened is I would notice the aftermath of the Tornado Mon. Like Tornado Mon has just like created all this chaos, and I'd almost be like, oops. Crap. Because I would be like, oh no, I've just like created all of this stuff, and I could just see all the rubble around me, and I'm like, okay, Tornado Mon needs to just be in a space for herself to just discharge and express and punch the pillow and furiously journal and say all the things, like, because we don't want to just calm it down. If you try and calm it down, it just gets more angry.
Don't
calm this down. So that's where it's like,
Yeah.
to feel.
Yeah, I tried it. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
And when you realize what's being triggered, like the wounds that we have inside, the stuff we're holding on to, you're like, of course we would be furious and angry and hurt and like rageful. Of course that's going to be there, not only for what we've experienced, but look at what's going on like for the generations, for the world. Like there's so much stuff that the women carry. Of course we're going to feel that. The stuff that we're like pressured to be. We're pressured to be perfect and to do all these things. And it's a lot. So of course that rage is going to be there, and we actually want to create space for it to be there. But we don't want to hurt people that we love. So like for me initially it was actually like, okay, Tornado Mon's here, I'm just going to go and be in my own bubble. And the more that I allowed myself to be in that, to express it, I built my capacity to hold the intensity of the experience. So I no longer went into fully like primitive primal state where I completely was lost in the situation. I would feel it and also have the observer present. And I'm like, oh, I know what's going on. Let me get curious. What do I need? That took time to get there. But the more you notice it, and you'll actually notice it after it happens more, more than like in the beginning. And you're like, oh, that just happened again. Let me backtrack and reflect on that. And the more you do that in the aftermath, the quicker you'll be able to catch it in the moment. And then you'll be able to catch it before it happens. And then you'll actually notice the subtle build up, and you'll be able to connect to it before it even gets to the explosion. And then sometimes you're going to have the explosion again, and that's okay. And you let yourself explode. But the more foundations you build for your relationship, your partner's going to know, oh yeah, I see what's going on. The dragon is here. How can I support? And sometimes the best way they can support is to get out of the way.
Yeah, I think so. And definitely, I think it makes a huge difference if I feel like we are in a good space in a relationship. I'm able to handle it much better than when we are not in a good space. And then he leaves when I'm like in that dragon mode. I feel like, yeah, abandoned, I would say. And just like he doesn't love me when I'm in that space, and that's really hurtful because I know it's not a nice place to be, but yeah.
Yeah. And I felt similar. Like I had a lot of shame around mine, and I felt like there was something wrong with me, and I felt like I was the messed up one, and I was the one that had to do all the work, and it felt really hard to be in that. It felt really isolating. And because Liam would stonewall and shut down, I just felt even more isolated, and like I just felt so alone and so ashamed. And so as I learned and practiced holding space for myself and letting myself like, it's actually okay, it's valid to experience this. And I noticed that I actually wasn't the only one that was having this experience. There was a lot of other women that I connected with that related. You start to feel like, oh, I'm not alone. That's the power of community as well, because you're not the only one that experiences this, but we often just misunderstand it and think that there's something wrong with it, but actually it's an intelligence. There is an intelligence in our responses. There is a part of you that is trying to protect you. And the more that we can learn to hold space for ourselves in that, the more that we're actually going to be able to come to our partner and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what I need. Can you provide that? And when we can come from that place, more often than not, they're going to be like, yeah, I desire to provide that for you. Like anytime I've asked Liam, do you want to support me? Do you want to do this? He's like, of course I do. But when Tornado Mon is there, like looking to attack him, he's got to go for cover and protect himself. So yeah. Anything else you want to add? I'm feeling complete.
No, I think, yeah, just real quick would be that probably one of the bigger contributing factors to the shift was actually Monique doing the inner work for herself. That really sped up the process, and like she'd always, comment and say like, it feels like it's just me doing all the work, kind of thing, and all that, but yeah, like her willingness to go into her stuff really, it like, even though I've got my stuff and I'm always willing to go through that as well, but when she started to go through those layers for herself, it just shifted the energetics of of the relationship, and I think a lot of that was just her self-awareness of those things that were coming up because of the unhealed wounds and aspects of herself that, you know, initially were completely unconscious. So we pretty much had to go through those tornadoes to get to the other side of it, to go, oh, okay, well, now that experience has happened, you've then kind of got a choice. And so it's your own personal choice how you want to proceed from that. But she wanted to go in and deal with it, and to not have to have those painful experiences be such a contributing factor to kind of the day-to-day. And so then that allowed me to come in and hold space in the way that I have, but then to take it then to another level with, say, like the coaching sessions, allows that connection to deepen even more. So
so I feel like in the past it was like in those like rage monsters or tornado moments, it was just all consuming, where that thinking part of the brain does shut down and you're completely lost in the experience. Whereas now, like I said, I still get triggered, I still experience triggers, but they're not all consuming anymore. I still get reactive as well. Like I have reactions, I'm like, oh, I noticed that I just reacted like that. Now I actually have the choice to take responsibility and be like, that wasn't maybe fair of how I responded. There's just a lot more ability to be with what I'm experiencing. Like I've expanded that capacity to be with the intensity, and it's no longer as scary. And I've got so many tools that support me through that. And then, like Liam said, he's more able to actually enter the space because it's not so full on, where he's like, because in those times he wasn't really like, I wasn't really receptive to his support. Whereas now I'm a lot more receptive, but I also know when I'm not receptive and when I actually just need to be in my own bubble, my own space. And I've actually learnt to enjoy that rather than needing Liam to be there, needing him to fix it, needing to have that resolve, which I so resonate with because I had that really strong. Now it's like I don't feel like I need that. I might desire it, but I also know I'm going to get it by tending to what I need to tend to. And there's a beautiful quote by Alison that I shared on Facebook recently. It was, the most generous thing you can give anyone is to take care of yourself. Because when you take care of you, you've got so much more to give. You've got so much more space. So if you find that you're not taken care of in any way, like your physical needs, if you're tired, you're going to be more receptive or more easily triggered. If you're hungry, or if you're dehydrated, or if you're like got way too much on your plate and you're too busy, you're just got so much going on, you're exhausted, it's going to be so much easier for you to be triggered and to lose yourself in that. So that self-care is so important, and doing that work for yourself is so important. But it does get easier, I promise. Well, thank you so much. Such a powerful conversation. I know so many people are going to really resonate and benefit from this. So thank you so much for your willingness to show up and your vulnerability in sharing your story and your experience, because you're not the only ones that have these challenges. And I know Liam and I really resonate with your experience as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Good Girl Unleashed podcast. If you are loving this content, go ahead and subscribe to be notified of upcoming episodes. Please leave a 5-star review to help me get these powerful teachings and practices to those who need it. If you would like to submit a question or would like to know more about how we can work together, send me an email to info@moniquecarmela.com. So much love to you, beautiful human. Until next time.